We're going to install a bulk plate which goes in the coupler here for the sustainer operation. Install a 1/4 inch nut, washer, install your bulk plate, washer, and a nut. And I believe you have nylon locking nuts. I'm not sure on your kit. Some may not come with it, some do. And if they don't, I recommend you put some epoxy on the end of this thread and the nut so it kind of locks it on. Get it as tight as you can. You can use wrenches if you have a wrench. Pre-fit your bulk plate into your coupler, and if it doesn't fit, you can use some sandpaper and place the sandpaper on the table like this and apply pressure to the edge of the bulk plate, and do this a few times and check for fit. If it doesn't fit again, do it again. Once you establish a fit, it should be snug. That's a good fit just like that. Once you establish a good fit, mix some epoxy up. Apply epoxy about a 1/2 inch around the edge of the coupler all the way around. Put a generous amount in there. Install your bulk plate. You can put it on a 45-degree angle if it's too tight. It should slide in. And insert the bulk plate at least a 1/4 inch recessed inside the coupler and let it set up. You may have to hold it like this for a few minutes for the epoxy to set up a little bit, otherwise it's going to drip out of the coupler or to one side, so you may have to hold this for a few minutes. If you've taken too much material off the bulk plate, you may have to stand here and hold it for a few minutes until the epoxy sets up, otherwise it's going to fall down on you. So just hold like this, check it, make sure it's straight, and probably a good 2.5, 3 minutes the epoxy should be set up. Once you have your epoxy set up on your bulk plate, you can install your coupler inside the airframe. Okay, next we're going to work on the payload section and the coupler section. Your coupler should be approximately, let's say here, it says 8 inches. It's 8 inches long. Rule of thumb, you're supposed to insert the coupler half the distance of the length of the coupler, which would be 4 inches. So get your ruler out, please, and mark 4 inches on one side and 180 degrees on the other side, or 4 inches. Take your payload section and insert your coupler at that 4-inch reference mark you made, and draw a line around the coupler for reference, because this is where you're going to stop when you install the epoxy. Okay, what we're going to do here is mix some epoxy up. Don't forget to put your gloves on. Put a generous amount of epoxy, approximately 1 inch inside the airframe. All the way around the airframe. Pretty good generous amount. And once you've have enough epoxy in here, take your coupler, insert it inside your payload section. And as you're putting it in, give it a twist so it covers the whole coupler inside, and stop right at that 4-inch reference mark you made and set it to the side. Okay, once you've epoxied your coupler inside your sustainer section, and your bulk plate is pretty much cured. It's time to put a good amount of epoxy fillet around the bulk plate and the inside part of this coupler all the way around. Make sure you put a pretty good bead in there. This is a very important part. This is where the rocket's going to get its load's going to pull on this part here on the recovery once it deploys. So make sure you get enough epoxy on there. Okay, it's time to install the nose cone onto your sustainer section. First of all, you have to drill a pressure hole using a 1/8 inch drill into the sustainer section. This will allow you for easy insertion of the nose cone. Pressure builds up in there, and we don't want the nose cone popping up as the rocket ascends either. So what I'm going to do is take my 1/8 inch drill bit and just kind of pre-drill a hole. Install the sheet metal screws that are provided, and install your sheet metal screws. To hold your nose cone on, here's the sustainer section, because it will fall off if you do not install these sheet metal screws. And I put them at least 120 degrees from each other. An example of if you're putting more than 2 or 3 wood screws into the nose cone, it's good just to label A, B, C. So when you line them up on your nose cone and your airframe, you know where the holes will be once you put it in. Perfect. Okay, it's time to put the rail buttons in. We have these 15-15 rail buttons. They're bigger than the ones that we used in the past. We're going to take our craft stick and a pencil. We're going to use this for a gauge. And we're going to go on the inside of the airframe and butt up against the aft end of the motor mount ring and mark the craft ring on the outside end of the airframe like that. Reference mark like so. Transpose that measurement to the outside. Take the mark and place it at the edge of the airframe on the aft end, and mark the end of the craft stick right there. Actually right on the... Okay, you establish the first crosshair, and since the motor mount ring is a 1/4 inch, you want to add 1/8 of an inch approximately. This will be your spot where you're going to be drilling a hole. Okay, use an 1/8 inch drill bit. Have your partner hold down on the airframe while you drill. Nice and straight and level. Don't go too far. Do not go into the motor tube at all. So this has gone into the side of the motor mount tube. Mix a little epoxy, very small amount of epoxy, and dip it inside that hole. Kind of hand screw it in. First couple turns, take your screwdriver. Install your rail button, and do not use a lot of pressure, just make it snug. That's all you need, is just do it snug and let the epoxy set up. Okay, now for the forward rail button, same setup. This time we're going to take our 18-inch dowel that we used with our craft stick hooked up to it, or not. Any kind of a dowel will work for a gauge. So you want to make sure you insert it in the forward part of the airframe until you touch the forward motor mount ring. Make sure you're not up against the eye bolt or the quick link or the recovery system. Take your pencil and make a mark as a reference. Pull it out, transpose that measurement. From the forward part of the booster to the reference line you made for your rail buttons. Get this down right here. And make your little cross here right there. And then add that 1/8 of an inch. From here to here, there's your 1/8 inch mark right here. That's where that forward motor mount ring should be. Take your drill. Bullseye. Right into the forward motor mount ring. Apply a little bit of epoxy inside that hole. Insert your rail button. And just tighten it down snug. Do not over tighten. And it looks pretty straight to me. Next, we're going to install a motor retention system that they have provided. It comes in 2 pieces, one part like this, and it should be recessed inside at least 1/4 inch, and there should be little small tiny threads on there that grab onto the epoxy. You can use epoxy and put it on the outside of the motor mount tube and the motor mount ring for a good fillet before we install this. Install it now, mix some epoxy, install your epoxy on there, take your ring with the small threads, and you should be able to turn it on. If it's hard to put it on, you may have to sand before you apply epoxy. So a pre-fit would be a benefit to you to put this on. Let the epoxy set up overnight before you screw anything tight on it or put the rocket on its aft end, and it should be all set, ready to go. If you wish, once you have the motor retention system on like this, you can put another small amount of epoxy as a fillet. Make sure you don't get it on the threads that this screws onto. Make sure the fillet goes from the smooth part of the retainer to the motor mount ring. Okay.
Ah, shut up. Battery must have walked out.
Take the other end of your recovery strap with the loop on it. Install your quick link to it and secure it. The big eye bolt like that, so secure. And what we do is I usually take it from my thumb to my chin, like this, pinch it off, make a small hoop like this, and tie a knot. It's kind of like a knot, slip knot like that, just like that. So you got a nice loop. Take your neatly folded parachute, unfold it. And make sure your shroud lines are equal with the canopy, with your finger right here holding it all equal. And I want to keep all the shroud lines equal and your canopy equal. Tie another knot in the shroud lines like this. You might have to pull on each line to keep the knot tight. Take your recovery harness that has the loop on it. Go through the loop with your parachute. Take your parachute and put it through the loop that you made in the shroud lines. You got a nice secure connection between your recovery strap and your parachute. To create fin fillets, mask off your airframe and the root of your fin approximately 3/16 of an inch. Don't forget to create a epoxy dam at the leading edge of the fin and the aft end of the fin so the epoxy does not drip down the airframe. Do the same thing on the other side. Okay, once the rocket is constructed, there's a finishing process technique that some people have, and I suggest either Krylon or Rust-Oleum rattle can paint works pretty good. Don't forget to use a good quality primer first. And of course, before we cover any paint, you can fill in the spirals if you want with a finishing glaze. It's very light and it sands very easy. It comes in two parts. It has the resin and the hardener. There's two types. This is icing made by USG. Works pretty good too. Same setup as the resin and the hardener, and it sands very easy, so you don't have to put very much on. It's good to put in the on the spirals and also sand the seam on the nose cone and fill it in with that glazing compound. Also, if you have some really bad finishing fillets, you can cover that with that glazing compound also and sand it to a nice, neat, smooth finish. And after you've done that, you can apply your primer, and then after your primer is dried, apply your paint, 2 or 3 coats, whatever's needed. What really finishes off a rocket after it's been painted is a top coat. Top coat works very well, gives it a nice finish, and hides kind of little pocks and blemishes that may happen during your painting or your refinishing. Thank you so much. I hope you have fun building your rocket, level 1 and your level 2 rocket. And of course, the level 1 instructions follow the same procedure for your level 2.